Moving into my first apartment was a rite of passage I had long awaited. The basement unit I found online boasted an affordable rent and a prime location in a city teeming with life, far removed from the sleepy town of my childhood. The building, aged but dignified, nestled in a neighborhood where the past and present melded seamlessly, promised the fresh start I yearned for. The excitement of independence was tinged with a thread of nervousness, a feeling I attributed to the novelty of my situation. The apartment, though modest, was a sanctuary. Its walls, thick and slightly damp, held the chill of solitude, a contrast to the warmth of my aspirations. The landlord, a shadowy figure who seemed to appear and disappear with the mist, handed me the keys with a cursory warning to keep the noise down, as if the silence wasn't already oppressive enough. That first night, as I lay in the embrace of my new beginning, the quiet was a blanket, heavy and comforting. However, as days turned into weeks, the charm of my sanctuary began to fray at the edges. Strange occurrences, subtle at first, started to puncture the stillness of my solitude. Scratches echoed from the ceiling, so faint I convinced myself they were the whispers of the building settling into its foundations. But then came the scream, a solitary, piercing cry that shattered the night's calm. It was so abrupt, so raw, that I found myself frozen, questioning if my mind, unmoored from the familiar, had conjured it. The oddities escalated, weaving a tapestry of unease. A rhythmic chanting, its origin indiscernible, seeped through the ceiling, a cadence that seemed both ancient and ominous. It disturbed the air, leaving a residue of dread that clung to the shadows. Conversations with neighbors were futile, their faces blank, responses evasive, as if a veil of silence had been drawn over the peculiarities that haunted my waking hours. My solitude, once a haven, began to morph into an arena of psychological warfare. The apartment above mine, a mirror to my own in layout, remained an enigma. Attempts to glean information about its occupants were met with walls of silence, or worse, absent smiles that hinted at unspoken secrets. The landlord, when pressed, offered nothing but vague reassurances that all was as it should be. The descent into unease was gradual, a slow corrosion of my sense of security. Nights were spent in vigil, listening to the symphony of inexplicable sounds that danced just beyond the reach of understanding. The scream, never repeated, echoed endlessly in my mind, a siren call to the unraveling of my sanity. The scratching, incessant now, spoke of desperation, of something clawing for escape. In this cocoon of the unknown, my reality began to fracture. The boundaries between the tangible and the imagined blurred, each strange occurrence a thread pulling me deeper into a labyrinth of fear. I stood on the precipice of the unseen, peering into the abyss that had opened beneath the ordinary facade of my life. The city with its pulsing life felt distant, a world apart from the shadows that now dwelled alongside me. The unraveling began subtly, with shadows stretching a bit too long across my walls, whispers in a language I couldn't decipher seeping through the floorboards. These anomalies in my perception intensified, as if the apartment itself conspired to erode my grasp on reality. My nights were restless, plagued by dreams where the line between the waking world and the realm of nightmares blurred, leaving me gasping for air in the dark, clammy embrace of my bed. One evening, as twilight bled into night, the chanting resumed with a fervor that sent chills down my spine. This time it was accompanied by a thumping rhythm, as if a ritual enacted above my head demanded my attention. Driven by a mixture of fear and an insatiable need for answers, I ventured outside, my gaze drawn upwards to the apartment above. The windows, previously an opaque barrier to the mysteries within, now flickered with candlelight, casting sinister shadows that danced with the chanting. In a moment of reckless courage, I approached the landlord, my voice trembling with the weight of unspoken fears. What happens in the apartment above mine at night? His eyes, clouded with secrets, met mine before he turned away, his words a cryptic warning. Some doors are better left unopened. The ambiguity of his response only fueled my paranoia, the feeling of being an outsider in my own home growing with each evasive answer. The next day, my reality began to warp further. Objects in my apartment seemed to shift of their own accord, my keys never where I left them, and my reflections in the mirror delayed, as if hesitant to reveal their secrets. Whispers filled the silence, voices that mocked and beckoned, urging me to uncover the truth hidden within the walls that imprisoned me. My interactions with the outside world dwindled, the city's vibrancy now a distant memory. Friends and family became voices on the other end of a phone line, their concern palpable but unable to breach the isolation that had enveloped me. Their words, meant to comfort, felt hollow against the backdrop of my growing despair. The apartment, once a symbol of independence, had become a labyrinth of mysteries, each corner shadowed with doubt. The climax of my descent came one night, as the chanting reached a crescendo that seemed to vibrate through my very soul. Unable to bear the torment any longer, I found myself standing before the door to the apartment above, my hand trembling as it hovered over the knob. The decision to turn back warred with the desperate need for answers. With a breath that felt like my last, I stepped forward into the unknown. What I found within was a realm that defied explanation, a space that seemed to exist outside the boundaries of the natural world. The room was empty, save for the candles that cast an otherworldly glow, their flames flickering as if alive. In the center, a circle inscribed with symbols that pulsed with an ancient power, the source of the chants now silent. The air was thick with the presence of something unseen, a force that whispered of old forgotten truths. Standing in the center of that otherworldly room, the silence enveloped me like a suffocating blanket. The abrupt cessation of the chanting left a void, a silence so profound it roared in my ears. The symbols on the floor, glowing with an ethereal light, seemed to beckon, their meanings elusive yet filled with an urgency that pierced the fog of my fear. In that moment, I was an intruder in a realm that existed just beyond the veil of the ordinary, a place where the rules of reality were rewritten by unseen hands. The air shifted, charged with an electric anticipation, as if the room itself was alive, breathing, waiting. I felt eyes upon me, a gaze that bore into my very soul, yet when I turned, I found only shadows. The sensation of being watched was inescapable, a pressure that weighed on my mind, fracturing the last vestiges of my sanity. The apartment above, once a source of curious speculation, had revealed itself as a portal to something ancient and malevolent. I stumbled back, the symbols searing themselves into my retinas, a kaleidoscope of otherworldly designs that danced behind closed eyelids. The boundary between the apartment and my own blurred, a miasma of energy seeping through the floorboards, infusing my sanctuary with the essence of the unknown. That night, as I lay in a bed that no longer offered solace, the whispers returned, no longer indistinct murmurings, but clear, demanding voices that promised enlightenment shrouded in madness. Days melded into nights, a continuous loop of haunting revelations and moments of terrifying clarity. My world contracted to the confines of the building, the city outside a distant memory, its cacophony of sounds and life as foreign now as the silence had once been. The inhabitants of the building, shadows flitting in the periphery of my vision, seemed complicit in the building's secrets, their silence a testament to the fear that gripped us all. In my search for understanding, I found only further questions. The landlord, his presence now as elusive as the answers I sought, became a specter, a figure shrouded in the mysteries that enveloped the building. Attempts to confront him were met with avoidance, his words a labyrinth from which there was no escape. "You see what you are meant to see?" he whispered during one such encounter, a statement that echoed in the depths of my mind, a riddle wrapped in the enigma of the building. The descent into the abyss was not a fall, but a gradual slide, each day a step deeper into the unknown. The apartment became a cell, the walls pulsating with the energy of the rituals performed above, their resonance a constant reminder of the thin veil that separated my world from the one that had begun to infiltrate it. The symbols, now etched in the corners of my vision, appeared without warning, a reminder of the pact that had been forged in my quest for truth. As the final pieces of my sanity threatened to unravel, a plan formed amidst the chaos of my thoughts. The rituals, the symbols, the chanting, all pointed to a convergence, a moment when the barrier between worlds would thin to a veil easily torn. Armed with a desperate resolve, I prepared to face the source of the whispers, to confront the entity that lurked in the shadows of the building. It was a decision born of madness, perhaps, but in the grip of the building's influence, madness and reason had become indistinguishable. The night chosen for my confrontation was devoid of moonlight, the darkness a cloak that enveloped the city in its silent embrace. The building seemed to breathe in anticipation, its walls echoing with the whispers of those who had tread this path before me and had not returned. Armed with nothing but a resolve, forged in the fires of my unraveling sanity, I ascended the staircase to the apartment above, each step a testament to the journey that had led me here. The door, once a barrier, now stood ajar, an invitation or perhaps a challenge. The room beyond was bathed in the light of countless candles, their flames casting shadows that danced with an eerie life of their own. At the center, the circle of symbols pulsed with a light that was not of this world, the air vibrating with the power of the unseen. As I crossed the threshold, the chanting resumed, a chorus of voices that seemed to emanate from the very walls. The language, unknown yet familiar, wrapped around me, a serpent of sound that sought to penetrate my mind. I resisted, focusing on the center of the room, where the air shimmered with the presence of the entity I had come to confront. "You seek answers," a voice whispered, a sound that was felt rather than heard, its timbre resonating within the depths of my soul. It was the voice of the building, the voice of the ancient being that had drawn me into its web. "But are you prepared for the truth?" it asked, a question that echoed the fears that had haunted me since my arrival. I steadied myself, drawing upon the remnants of my courage. "I must know," I replied, my voice a mere whisper against the cacophony of chants. "I must understand what lies beyond the veil." The room fell silent, the shadows coalescing into a form that was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. It was the essence of the building, of the ancient rituals that had imbued its walls with power. "The veil," it spoke, its voice a tapestry of sounds, "is but a threshold between worlds, a barrier that we have sought to breach for eons. You, a mere mortal, have crossed paths with forces beyond your comprehension." The revelation was a blow, the realization that my quest for understanding had led me to the heart of a cosmic struggle. The building, the apartment, and the events that had unfolded were but a facade, a battleground for forces that defied human understanding. The entity before me, a guardian of the threshold, offered a choice: to step back and forget, or to step forward and embrace the knowledge that came with a price. My decision, born of a journey that had stripped me of everything but the desire for truth, was inevitable. I stepped forward, accepting the mantle of knowledge, the whispers of the building now a chorus that welcomed me into its fold. The entity, its form dissipating into the shadows, left behind a silence that was profound, a testament to the passage that had occurred. In the aftermath, the apartment and the city regained their semblance of normality, but I was forever changed. The shadows held secrets that I now understood, the whispers companions in the solitude that had become my refuge. The building stood as a beacon, a threshold between worlds where the veil had been lifted, if only for a moment. As the sun rose, casting light on the city that had witnessed my transformation, I knew that the journey was not over. It had merely shifted, the search for understanding now a path that led into the depths of the unseen. The building, my apartment, and the shadows that danced within were no longer mere constructs of brick and mortar, but gateways to the infinite mysteries that lay just beyond the reach of the ordinary.